Hey, Chris, I saw your question about average value. Let me try to explain it. First of all, there are two formulas for average value, or mean value theorems. There's the mean value theorem for derivatives, and there's the mean value theorem for integrals. Let me try to explain this in a more holistic way. When I say average value, it's like average of the function. If you have the function and I ask you for the average value of that function, then you want to use the average value. So in other words, in this question, they give us, hold on. They give us the velocity of Bob. So they give us Bob's velocity. Think of that as Bob's function. If I ask you for the average of that function, then you want to use the mean value theorem. So in other words, if I give you B and I ask you for the average of B, that you want to use the average value function. Now, or average value integral here. So in other words, if I average, put blank in here. It's like average blank, average function. If I ask you for the average of something, let's say it's velocity. If I ask you for the average velocity, ask you for the average velocity, and I give you velocity, then what you're going to want to do here is going to want to say that the average velocity is the integral, let's say 1 over b minus a to b of that velocity. Now let's just hypothetically. What if I were to give you the acceleration of something, and I asked you for the average acceleration? Okay, if I give you acceleration and I ask you for the average of acceleration, then the average acceleration would be b minus a integral from a to b of acceleration. But this works for any letter. Like if I gave you L of t, and I asked you for the average of L of t, then you would have to do the average of L of t would be 1 minus b over a integral a to b of L of t. If I gave you b of t, which is what this case, if I gave you b of t and asked you about the average of b of t, then you'd want to do b of t. Now, I'm going to go on a little bit further here. Sometimes they want the average rate of change. So here's where it can get a little tricky, okay? Let's say I give you velocity. No, stop here. Stop. Okay. Second part of the lesson here. When do you use this one? When they're asking for the average rate of change of a function. So if I give you b and I were to ask you what is the average rate of change of b, the average rate of change of b's derivative. Sorry. God dang it. I'm going to start over. Third time. Here we go. What if I give you b and I ask you for its average rate of change? If the average rate of change, you would use this formula because I want the slope between the function value at a and the function value at b. If I ask you for the average value of b, it's the integral. If I ask you for the average rate of change of b, once this rate of change, then you're going to just use old-fashioned slope. Now, where it can get a little confusing is, what if I give you displacement and ask you for the average velocity? What if I give you displacement after average velocity? That would be d of b minus d of a over b minus a. See, I can ask you for average velocity two different ways. If I give you velocity and ask you for average velocity, you have to use the average value. If I give you displacement and I ask you for the average velocity, then you'd actually use this function. Let's try that again. If I give you acceleration and I ask you for average acceleration, you've got to do the average value. That's not giving you acceleration, I'm asking you about acceleration. But what if I gave you velocity and asked you about average acceleration? Oh, the average acceleration then would be v of b minus v of a over b minus a. So let me just sum that up again. The basic way to do this, and this is probably like the short version of what I just did. If I ask you to find the average of something that I give you, like I've asked you for the average of g of x. If I ask you for the average of g of x and I give you g of x, then you have to do the integral divided by the interval, average value. If I give you displacement and I ask you for average velocity, then you'd have to use this one because I'm giving you the antiderivative of the thing I want, or I want the average derivative of the thing that I gave you. So just be aware that in general, this one's used almost all the time, because, not almost all the time, let me rephrase that. When you're looking at the exam, when they ask you for average value, or I'm sorry, the average of a function b, and they give you b, you know it's average value. That's probably the simplest sentence in the whole thing. And typically on the test, if they ask you for the average rate of change of b, and they give you b, then you have to use that one. I think that's actually the best way to do this. I'm going to say that one more time. If I give you b, and I ask you for the average of b, you want to use this. If I give you f, and I want the average of f, then use this. If I give you b, and I want the average rate of change of b, then you want to use this one. Or if I give you f and I want the average rate of change of f, then you want to use this mean value. Probably way longer explanation than you wanted.